A maid, standing quietly behind her billionaire boss. Suddenly, she places her hand firmly on his shoulder, grips it tight, and with a trembling but fearless voice, she says one shocking word. "Shut up." Everyone froze. Why would a maid, who could lose everything in a second, dare to speak like this? What secret was hidden behind her tears? Stay tuned, because the truth you're about to hear will break your heart and leave you in tears. The story begins in New York City, inside a mansion that glittered like crystal under the nightlights. The walls were high, the chandeliers sparkled, and luxury cars lined the driveway. From the outside, it looked like the perfect home, but inside, the silence was heavy and cold. That mansion belonged to Richard Johnson, one of the city's richest men. He was known in business circles for his sharp mind and ruthless strategies. But at home, he was known for something else. His temper. Richard's wife, Catherine, had grown used to his bursts of anger. She no longer argued, she simply endured. Their 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, was a sweet child with big blue eyes and a heart full of love. But fear often kept her quiet. The only person who brought her comfort was Emma, the maid. Emma was young, in her late 20s, with soft brown hair and kind eyes. She had been working in the Johnson mansion for almost 2 years, and in that time, Sophia had grown attached to her like a second mother. Emma's presence in the house was calm, almost invisible. She worked quietly, moved softly, and never raised her voice. Yet behind her gentle smile was a heart carrying deep scars. Scars no one in the mansion could see. She rarely spoke of her past, but sometimes, when Sophia hugged her, tears filled her eyes for reasons the little girl could not understand. One evening, dark clouds rolled over the city. Thunder rumbled. Rain splashed against the tall windows, and the sound of the storm filled the halls of the mansion. Richard returned home late that night, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. He was furious. A major business deal had slipped through his hands, costing him millions. His face was red with anger, and as he threw his coat onto the couch, his voice roared across the living room. "Emma!" he shouted, the sound louder than the thunder outside. "Where are you? Why is this house not spotless? I pay you to keep everything perfect." Emma hurried out of the kitchen, wiping her hands nervously on her apron. "I'm sorry, sir," she said softly. "I'll fix it right away." But Richard wasn't done. His anger needed a target, and Emma was the easiest one. "Every single day I come home and there's something wrong. Do you even know how much I spend to keep this place running? And this is the result? Pathetic." The words struck Emma, but she stayed quiet. She lowered her head, used to this storm. Sophia, however, had been watching from the staircase. The little girl trembled at her father's voice. She rushed down the stairs and ran to Emma, hiding her face in the maid's dress. Emma bent slightly, comforting her, but only fueled Richard's rage. "Get away from her," he snapped, pointing at Emma. "You're just the maid. Don't act like your family." His words cut deep, and for a moment the room was filled with silence, except for the rain outside. Catherine, standing by the doorway, shook her head sadly, but she didn't intervene. Sophia's small arms clung tighter around Emma, her sobs muffled in the maid's clothes. And then, something unexpected happened. Emma, who had endured so much in silence, suddenly straightened her back. Her breathing was shaky, her hands trembling, but she raised her eyes to meet Richard's furious glare. In a trembling yet steady voice, she spoke words no one ever imagined hearing. "Mr. Johnson," she whispered. Then louder, "Please, shut up." The room froze. Catherine gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Sophia clutched Emma even tighter, sensing the storm about to explode. Richard's face turned crimson, his pride shattered. "What did you just say?" he thundered, stepping closer. "You dare to speak to me like that? Yes, Emma said, her voice breaking but firm. I asked you to shut up because your words are killing more than you realize. The fire in Richard's eyes burned hotter. He loomed over her, towering like a mountain, ready to crush a small stone. Explain yourself right now, or you'll regret this. Emma's hands shook, her knees weak, but she stood her ground. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling as she finally released the truth she had buried for so long. You see me as just a maid, someone who cleans your floors and serves your meals. But do you know why I'm here? Do you know why I never complain, no matter how harsh you are? Because once I had a child, a little boy with the brightest smile, with laughter that filled my tiny home. He was my world, my reason to live. Her voice cracked as the memory overwhelmed her. Sophia looked up, eyes wide, listening. Catherine's hand trembled as she reached for a chair. Richard's anger paused, confusion flickering on his face. But he's gone, Emma whispered, her tears falling freely now. He died because our home was filled with shouting, anger, and fear. My husband screamed every day, cursed every night, fought with me until my son's little heart couldn't bear it anymore. The doctors said, stress, trauma, fear, it all weighed on him. He was only 6 years old when he collapsed in my arms. I held him as his heartbeat slowed, and then it was gone. A heavy silence filled the room. Even the storm outside seemed to pause. Emma's voice shook as she continued. And every time you raise your voice, every time you crush someone with your words, I see my boy again. I can't let Sophia grow up in the same nightmare. I can't let her heart carry the same scars. That's why I told you to shut up. Not for me, for her. Richard's chest rose and fell, his anger draining like water from a broken glass. For the first time in years, he was speechless. His eyes moved to Sophia, who clung to Emma with tear-streaked cheeks. His daughter, his only child, looked at him not with love, but with fear. The realization pierced deeper than any insult. Catherine stepped forward, her voice trembling. Richard, she's right. Look at our daughter. She's afraid of you. She feels safer with Emma than with her own father. Is this the life you want for her? Richard staggered back, collapsing into a chair. His mind flashed with memories of his own childhood. The stern face of his father, the shouts that filled his home, the feeling of never being good enough. He had promised himself he would never become that man. Yet here he was, repeating the same cycle. He buried his face in his hands, whispering, "Oh God, what have I become?" The room stayed silent, except for the sound of quiet sobbing. Hours passed, the storm faded, and the night grew deep. Finally, Richard rose. His steps were slow, his face pale, his eyes swollen with unshed tears. He walked toward Emma and Sophia, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard. "Emma," he said, struggling for words, "I don't deserve forgiveness. Not from you, not from my wife, not even from my daughter. But thank you. Thank you for opening my eyes before it is too late. From today, you are not just a maid in this house. You are family." Emma's lips trembled. She covered her mouth as fresh tears spilled. Sophia, overjoyed, leapt into her father's arms. Richard hugged her tightly, pressing his face into her hair. For the first time in years, the mansion echoed not with shouting, but with the sound of love. The next morning was unlike any other. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting the mansion in golden warmth. Richard joined his family at the breakfast table, something he hadn't done in years. He spoke gently to the staff, offered a smile instead of orders, and when Emma walked in, he stood up. "Please," he said with sincerity, "sit with us. You belong here." Emma hesitated, shocked, but Catherine nodded with a smile. Sophia clapped her hands in delight, pulling Emma toward a chair. And for the first time in a long time, the Johnson family and Emma sat together, not as employers and servant, but as a family bound by something stronger than wealth, compassion. From that day, everything began to change. Richard worked on his temper. Catherine supported him. Sophia blossomed into a happy child, and Emma found healing for the wounds of her past. She could never bring back her son, but she could protect Sophia, and in doing so, she found peace. Sometimes it takes the courage of the weakest voice to silence the loudest. Emma's bravery didn't just protect Sophia, it saved Richard from becoming the monster he once hated. Words have power. They can wound deeper than any knife, or they can heal stronger than any medicine. Richard learned that lesson the hard way. And as life reminds us all, respect and kindness cost nothing, yet they can mean everything to someone's heart. So before you speak, pause, think, because one careless word can destroy a life, but one brave word can save it.